Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Steve Harney. I'm the founder of Keeping Current Matters, and we're doing our deep dive, our weekly deep dive. And today we're going to be talking about minority home ownership rates and building household wealth. All right. And there's something I need to say before we even get started. I know that we have both a legal and ethical obligation, being in the real estate business, to do the right thing all across the board. But I will say that today we're going to not just look at that legal and ethical obligation, but more the moral responsibility we have to try to help as many families as we possibly can that are looking for home ownership to attain home ownership. At Keeping Current Matters, when you first walk in the front door, right next to the reception area, it is our why, what we go to work every day for. And what it says there is, we want every family to be confident when buying or selling a home. And the onus is on every single family, including minorities. All right. So it's really important that we understand that there's some challenges there and that we take the responsibility to go on with that. So let me get started with the presentation itself. As I already mentioned, this is a deep dive where we go deep into one particular subject. But before we get there, I want to give you a quote from Winston Churchill. The price of greatness is responsibility. And the only thing I want to really nail home today is we have a responsibility to help as many families or individuals that we possibly can to attain their dreams of home ownership. That's what we've taken on as being in the real estate profession or in the lending profession. Our job is not to handpick who we're going to help and who we're not going to help. Our job is to help every single family. And the reason why that's so important and the reason we're doing this deep dive on minority home ownership rates and building household wealth is the fact that we know as realtors, as mortgage professionals, we know one thing. The greatest way, the quickest way to build wealth, the main reason most people, the main asset most families own is their home, the equity in their home. So if we're going to help people build wealth, then home ownership's got to be a key piece to that. And here's the reason that we're doing it about minority home ownership rates. Here's a dramatic U.S. wealth gap. It still remains. This is the median wealth of the major racial groups. Asians, $536,000. Whites, $285,000. But look at the drop-off when we get to Hispanic and Blacks. All right. And this is Black History Month, and we should salute the history of the Black population and everything that it has gone through. And we should definitely that should be part of our thinking every day this month. But it should be part of our thinking every day of every month. And what we should be thinking about is not just the celebration of the great things that the Black community has accomplished, but also try to figure out ways that we can help them partake more in the American dream. And that's what this is about today. You know, really saying, how can we take those last two columns, minority home ownership, and raise them pretty dramatically? And the quickest way to get there is through home ownership. Let me explain that. The Federal Reserve Board every 3 years does a survey of consumer finances. The last one was between 2019 and 2022. Growth in median net worth was the largest 3-year increase over the history of the modern survey of consumer finances, more than double the next largest one on record. So the last one taken, which ended at the end of 2022, came out in September of 2023, several months ago, all right, showed that this particular 3-year span was the best 3-year span ever. And very obviously, we know we had the unicorn years around the pandemic where prices just shot through the roof. And of course, that raised the equity for millions of homeowners across the country. For families that own their primary residence, housing wealth increased substantially between 2019 and 2022, as the rise in house prices over this period far outpaced inflation. The median net housing value increased 44% between 2019 and 2022. Those are big numbers, ladies and gentlemen. But not every American family was able to partake in it. And that's what we have to make sure that the next 3-year span, more and more families partake in that jump. Now, we're not going to have the same jump. We're not going to have 44% over the next 3 years. We know that. But whatever that equity buildup is over the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it's to everyone's benefit that everyone partake in it, at least everyone that wants to. Because if we help people with home ownership, here's the bottom line that we can't really refute. Homeowners' net worth on average is $396,200. Renters' net worth is a little over $10,000. That's a gigantic spread, almost 40%. So if that's the spread that we're talking about, we have to help as many people that want to jump into home ownership in any way that we possibly can. And that gap widened pretty dramatically over the years. Even if we go back to 2010, right after the financial crisis, the great financial crisis, where prices, dropped dramatically because of foreclosures. Even then, in 2010, the spread was unbelievable. The difference, the gap, was tremendous. And if we move forward to the last 3 years, again, that gap was tremendous. But not everyone in this country was able, not every family in this country was able to take advantage of that increase in equity, because there were some people who wanted to be homeowners that we didn't get there. Now, we could make excuses about, well, we first have to help with the wage situation, and that's really where the biggest challenges are. Not every minority is treated fairly when it comes to wages in regard to jobs, and I get that, but we don't have control over that. We hire a very limited amount of people in our job, but let's not use that as an excuse, because at every wage, all right, every wage segment, homeowners have much greater net worth than renters do. So we have to stop thinking about it as a situation. Well, there's reasons, there's that. Yeah, the main reason is that we're not helping as much as we possibly can be. And we want to make sure that we get into that. I'm not talking to everyone here. I know most of us work really, really, really hard on that. But I think we almost have to put it at the front of the list so that we can help as many people of color attain the same benefits of homeownership that we've attained. And if we take a look all the way up, it's still the same, even at the highest income levels. So here's another breakdown of it. Even at $31,000 to $56,000, there's a big difference between owner net worth and renter net worth. And a major piece of that is the actual home itself, the equity in the home itself. So let's break that down. Here it is. By the income levels, income categories, we can see that the equity in a primary residence is a major piece. All the way up to $100,000 is the major piece of a person's net worth. And we have to make sure that we understand that that's the case, and that we understand that we have to help as many people as we possibly can partake in that. And even at the highest income, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want you thinking I'm hiding that from anybody. All right. Obviously, the other investments that people can put in jump pretty dramatically because of that income is much higher. But still, their net worth is a piece of their equity in their home is a piece of that net worth. Overall, homeownership promotes wealth building by acting as a forced savings mechanism and through home value appreciation. In addition, owning a home promotes an intergenerational homeownership and wealth building. Children of homeowners transition to homeownership earlier, lengthening the period over which they can accumulate wealth. We often talk about we have to break the cycle, whatever that cycle is. If a young child is hit by his father, he has a greater chance of hitting his children. And the father that hit him was probably hit by his father. All right. But what we need to do is break that cycle. Same thing here. Children of homeowners transition to homeownership earlier. We have to make sure in the minority community we get as many homeowners as possible so that the next generation transition to homeownership earlier. And that lengthens the period. And that will even out over time the big disparity in net worth between whites and the minority population. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a big thing, because it's not just the net worth that we're talking about here. People sometimes argue with me that, well, Steve, to be frank with you, home equity is really not really money. We really shouldn't consider it net worth because it's really hard to go get it if you want it. Yeah, you're going to pay a price if you refinance the house or taking out a HELOC or on the equity of your home. you're definitely going to pay a price for that. There's no question about that. But ladies and gentlemen, nobody's arguing that the money you have in a 401k is not part of your net worth. And you have a big price to pay if you want to take money out of your 401k. But what we're talking about now is the home, and in and of itself, the equity in a home drives in a big way net worth. But there's other things that happen with that equity. People can pull that equity out and help their children go to college. Well, if you don't own a house, you can't pull the equity out and you can't help your kid. Home ownership really drives success, financial success. And we did a webinar, the deep dive just a couple of weeks ago on the non-financial benefits, which are probably even more important. But from a financial standpoint, success, financial success is driven by, in many cases, your ability to own a home. And the challenge is when we take a look at the home ownership rates, part of the reason that the Black and Hispanic community have less net worth, that first slide we showed you, is because they have the lowest home ownership rate. And again, we have to do everything in our power to rectify that situation. We have to help. If there's a challenge with income, let's figure out how we can get around those challenges legally. If there's a challenge with down payment, there's a tremendous amount of down payment assistance available. But in many cases, it's just a lack of education of us explaining to someone that, yes, you could buy a house. I know you don't think you can, but let's sit down and take a look at all the numbers. And we have to be willing to do that with every single person that's looking to purchase a home. Because one of two things are going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Either we're going to find out, you know what, to their surprise, they can buy a house right now. To their shock, might be that they can buy a house right now. Or if not, we can counsel them on what they need to do from now over the next 2 or 3 years to get themselves ready to purchase a home from a financial standpoint. That education is what we stand for, we should stand for as an industry. We definitely stand for at KCM. The whole essence of KCM is we're going to educate the public as to what's actually taking place so they can make better decisions when they're buying and selling a house. They can feel confident when they're buying and selling a house. Well, that education goes across the board. We have to educate people that don't believe that they have either a down payment or whatever to purchase a home. And we'll get to that in a second. Home equity is a key to building wealth because it can provide a property owner with a way to tap the value of their home, such as through a home equity line of credit. And when they sell their home, the property owner will pocket more money after paying off their mortgage. So let's talk about real things that happen because the Black and Hispanic communities have less home ownership and have less net worth. Why is that? Not just the equity in the house. We're not just talking about that. That's the only impact. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we take a look at this graph, it's pretty interesting. Now, there'll be some out there that will talk about, well, correlation and causation. I'm not going to argue whether it's correlation or causation. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But here it's pretty interesting. Tappable equity is the green line. The definition of tappable equity means how much equity do you have in your home that you could take out and still leave 20% equity in your home. Because if you have 20% equity in your home, you're safe. So how much additional equity do you have? Now, the more equity a family has, the more prone they are is to start a new business. And it's the two lines go, there's a symbiotic relationship. Again, I'm not going to say causation, correlation, for those people who like to use those two terms, but there is pretty big coincidence here that as more people have equity, more people have the financial courage to go ahead and start their own business. If you look at KCM, KCM was started in my garage with money we borrowed against the house. KCM wouldn't be here. We are now in 28,000 square feet with 55 employees. That business wouldn't be here. What are other businesses that started in a garage based on a loan? Well, there's a couple of small businesses like Apple, like Under Armour. That equity in a house has enabled people to go ahead and do that. And if we don't help the minority community gain greater percentage of minority community gain home ownership, then they're being pulled back on that. Because you can't go to your landlord and say, listen, I'd like to borrow $20,000 against my rental so I can start a small business, a seed capital for my small business. You can't do that. The landlord's going to say, what are you, crazy? Because if you own a house, you can do that. So there's many different ways that have owning a home and being in that home helps in a very, very, very big way. Another thing I want to discuss is these differences in home equity and other wealth-fueled disparities in financial security and older age. Fuel disparities in financial security and older age. Because home equity and other assets can serve as a nest egg to fund retirement needs. Homeowners and older adults with more wealth are in a stronger financial position to successfully manage the dual costs of housing and care. Now I'm going on 70. So this is becoming very real to me. My mother-in-law's in her mid-90s. It is becoming very real to our family. See, people are living longer and longer and longer. And because they're living longer and longer and longer, what they need as they grow older is more help. All right. They need more assistance. They need more assistance with their medications. They need more assistance, maybe just moving around. They need more assistance in keeping active. They need that. Now, everyone's going to argue, well, I'm not going to need that. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to fall into one or two categories. You're going to fall in a category, you're going to live long enough to need it, or you're going to die before you need it. There's not a third category. So everyone, unless you die before that time comes, is going to come to some point in their life, whatever that age is for each individual, that you're going to need that type of help. And what are we talking about here? Well, maybe you don't want to be in your 4-bedroom colonial anymore. All your kids are gone. They're adults. They have adult children now. You don't want to pay the air conditioning. You don't want to pay the heat. You don't want to pay somebody to mow the yard. You don't want to pay someone to update the house and do all the fixing. And you might need special care, even memory care at certain ages. So you're going to move into an assisted care living type of facility. And again, very few will age in place into their 90s into 100, and more people are living into their 90s into 100. So they need that money in order to go. And here's the difference. Like with my mother-in-law, she owned her home. She sold her home. And for years, she lived with my wife and I, all right, so that she didn't have to worry about paying rent or anything, so she could let that money build even bigger. But it came to a point that she needed other people like her around her. She needed people that she could go to lunch with and go to dinner with and go out to the store with, people her age that had the same needs and wants. So she spends a couple of months a year in an assisted living facility. She spends a couple of months a year at our lake house with us. We have a guest house there. And she spends a couple of months a year down at her condo down in Florida. She lives the life that we all want to live. I hope that we live as good a life when we're in our 90s, my wife and I. But ladies and gentlemen, one of the key factors are going to be that, just like with my mother-in-law, did you own a house or did you rent? Because if you look at 65 and older, what we could see is the net worth of 65 and older is $499,000. The net worth of a renter, 65 and older, is $10,000. So when the time comes that you need that money in order to just live your later years much more comfortably. Homeownership is a big part of that. But this isn't fair. If we take a look at median wealth for households age 65 and older, we can see that, thank God, in the Black and Hispanic community, the homeowners do have some money. But why is it that it's more than $100,000 less than the Asian community, and the white community has double the amount of 65 and older? Why is that the case? And this is right from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University, these numbers, ladies and gentlemen, because they're concerned about it. They did a paper on it. As people get older, especially minorities getting older, they don't have as many options. And you and I together, can change that. We could put extra effort into making sure that the people that maybe are not sure they could buy a house or not necessarily thinking about it right now, we educate them to the opportunities that are there. And we handle some of the obstacles. What are some of the obstacles to home ownership? Well, I found this pretty interesting. These are prospective buyers cite the reasons they're not jumping into the market right now. Well, some are waiting for the home prices to drop. They don't think they can afford the houses that are there now. And there's no question, ladies and gentlemen, that affordability is a key issue across every racial category. But it is interesting that it's less of an issue in the white community than it is in the Black and Hispanic community. Or they're unable to save for a down payment. The percentage of whites that were unable to save for a down payment was minuscule, didn't even register. But take a look at the Hispanic and Black community. So those are obstacles that we have to overcome, ladies and gentlemen. We have to help the people of color. We have to help them attain the same benefits of the American dream that the rest of us are enjoying right now. And we have to acknowledge that we have to go the extra mile to make sure that that actually happens. Now, I pray to God that we don't have to worry as much, though I'm sure it's still there, where people are afraid to show somebody a house in a certain neighborhood. Let's get by that. And I think that little by little, we're getting by that. Maybe a lot by a lot, we're getting by that. But that's not just good enough. That's being passive. If somebody walks up to you and says, yes, I have the money, let's buy a house. All right. And you're showing them that, the house for them. That's cool that you're doing that. But let's take those people that are not sure that they could purchase a home or afraid to purchase a home, and let's educate them. Let's let them help them overcome those obstacles. I think that's who we are. Not next Monday. Next Monday's a holiday, but 2 weeks from today, we're going to take 2 of those minutes. Debunking 2 myths, the 20% down payment. There are many people that believe that you need 20% down in order to purchase a home. Not true. Hasn't been true for years, for decades. But there are some people that understand, that still believe that. We have to educate those people. And there are people that think that you need a 780 FICO score in order to get a mortgage. No, 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 no. I know the news is out there saying that the average FICO score is 760 and 770 on mortgages. But that doesn't mean that's what you need. Matter of fact, I think it's a lack of education that keeps that number high, because people with less of a FICO score don't even try. So we're going to break that down for you next week again. All right. Or additional, and not next week, 2 weeks from now. We're going to break that down in an additional way. It's important. The American dream is for Americans, not certain Americans, all Americans. And if we take what we do for a living seriously, it's not only our legal and ethical obligation, it's our moral responsibility. And going back to the quote by Churchill, the price of greatness is responsibility. Let's commit this year, 2024, to making sure that we go out of our way to help educate everybody about the benefits of homeownership and how you can attain homeownership. Because there's an awful lot of people out there that don't understand it. At no fault of their own, they were just never given that education. And it's our responsibility to do that. Here's your first step. If you're really buying into the fact that you want to be one of those people that changes the world, changes that family's world, changes it for generations, jump in. Let them know who you are. Here's the Real Talk. If you don't know what Real Talk is, if you're a KCM member, you download the app, you open and sign into it. They give you a script. You can customize it, rehearse it. They give you visuals. Let people know that you care. There's no better way than putting some videos out there saying, hey, listen, I do care and I want to help. And I don't think we should do that just because it's Black History Month. I think we should, again, celebrate the history of the Black population, Black people. I think we should celebrate it. There's no question about that. There's some great history there. But we should help them 12 months a year. We should help them 52 weeks of the year. And we should help everybody, including minorities, 365 days a year. Again, we have a ethical and moral obligation, and probably more important, we have a moral responsibility to do that. Basically, we're going right back to what I always say. Most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening. Great agents can explain what's happening. I'm calling every single agent on this call to go out and explain to as many families as they can what it takes to purchase a home today, as far as down payment is concerned. And again, we're going to cover that in 2 weeks. But just start the process, making the commitment that you're going to help every family feel more confident when they're buying and selling a house. Well, as I say every week, you gave me 30 minutes of your life, and I hope we gave you a good return on that investment. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.